Wait for it. Wait for it. Keep waiting. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Working Musicians Podcast, where I am your host, Dris Organica, and I am talking like a jackass. Sorry, it's early in the morning. I kind of have my morning voice, so I just sound like a dick. For whatever reason, I've been waking up super early, so instead of, doing these late in the evening, I'm doing them early in the morning. It's very, very different, It's kind of like I'm not really fully awake yet, but I haven't been bruised and battered by the day, the life events that happen, the driving in the traffic, the crying in the rain, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of different. I feel like I've got in some ways, a different level of clarity, maybe, but I'm not quite lucid. Not until I've had another refreshing drink of Earl Grey tea. Yes, I think I might just wipe this out here. Well, alrighty there. Much better. Now that my tea is all finished, you know what time it is? It's time to wake up with a beer. On this episode is called "Wake Up with a Beer," right? Salute. It's so weird. It's so early that it feels like night. So what the hell? I'll drink to that. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so it's early in the morning. I think this might end up being the new wave of the future, because I figure if I go to bed early, then I can wake up real early, and that guarantees me a little bit of time, and maybe if I get in the habit of waking up early, I can do one of these every morning. I don't know how practical that is, but you never know. As my life changes, I like to shake it up, and this is something I enjoy doing, so perhaps it'll be a good thing. And plus, when you wake up in the morning, your voice tends to be a little bit more radio-esque, I guess you could say. So perhaps that's a good thing. So, it's a little bit about what I did yesterday. I went out to the country and viewed some more properties. But this time, these were on some that were around a lake. So in addition to being kind of off the beaten path, they're also on a lake. And it was pretty cool. The only thing is, for some reason, when it does come time to sell one of these houses, they sure do take a long time to sell. So that's kind of something that I'm kind of leery of, because they're all kind of far enough from civilization to where it's like you got to wonder what kind of people are going to be living there. And it seems like for the most part, it would be retirees based on what I saw out there. Mostly some older folks, No, not like nursing home age, but, older people of that nature. And so it's kind of like, okay, I see kind of why this area is sort of like this. And I realized, there's not going to be a lot of younger folks like me out there. But still, it's just kind of nice to see what country living on the lake can be afforded at. And it's remarkably cheaper than anything that's in kind of the more lived in areas, I guess you could say. So I got home and man, we were just tired. We went to a park, just to let the kids stretch out. We were there for a while. It was pretty cool. The park we were at, they have this like nature trail. It's kind of through the wetlands. And so the entire way through this nature trail, which is like over a mile long, which was fun with two kids. Although my son handled it just fine. My daughter, not so much. But he basically walked the whole way. I was very proud of him. He's such a big boy. But the entire way was like paved in wood. It was like a deck all the way through there. I just couldn't. It was like a wooden, like timber. What do you call it? Yeah. Wood, boards. It was boarded the entire way. And I just couldn't believe it. It was just like, wow, out here, that's crazy. So that was one of the coolest nature trails I ever saw. Hell, And it only cost us $5 a person for me and the missus to get in. So I'm like, well, this is awesome. Hell, if we lived out here, we'd go here all the time just to walk this stupid nature trail. It's so neat. But so we finally got back from looking at some properties in an area we hadn't really explored too much. And we like to be explorers. It's just nice to know, if it's a good idea to at least go out into an area before you start looking at houses, kind of get a lay for the land, And that's what we largely did. So, but eventually we got back, and we hit traffic like, whatever, let's just go to Denny's. Let the kids they were acting nuts and they were in traffic and just screaming. And so, okay, we were about to lose it. So we stopped at the Denny's, ate there for about an hour or so, and eventually drove home and when traffic was better. And I'll tell you, by the time we got home, it's like we were home for like 30 minutes. We're just like, the kids don't need baths. You're going to bed. Put them to bed by 7:30, by 8. We're out. That's just the sign. That's just how life goes when you're a parent. Sometimes days are very stressful and just tiring and you just go to sleep. However, I must say, the old Buick drove nicely after all the maintenance stuff I did. Although now I kind of can tell like it's got 90,000 miles on it. It's like the shocks aren't at the point where they absolutely need to be replaced, but I can tell they're on their way out. It's just, will it be 5,000 miles, 10,000 miles, 50,000 miles? I don't know, but I can just tell it's not quite riding the way it used to, and not that replacing the shocks on it it's probably that expensive of a job, even if I took it somewhere. Let's just say I don't take things for other people to fix unless I just don't have the time needed for in between now and the time I need it fixed by, which is like, if the time is between now and I'm at work, just take it somewhere, sweetie, that's fine. But if I go around to fixing it, sometimes it takes a while, and I don't think it would be that big of a job based on what I know changing shocks are, but let's just say it's not the kind of thing I'm looking forward to do because I've never done it. I understand how it's supposed to be done, but there's just something that doesn't sound very enjoyable about it. So a lot of stuff you got to take off. Like, geez. But at any rate, so I was real happy, after several hundred miles of driving, by several hundred, it was probably like 200. The car was driving great, better than before. Great success. So we got home and just passed out. That's just how it goes sometimes. Now I got to do all that stuff to my little work car that I go back and forth in. That thing's been beat to hell, but it drives great. That's why I like Toyotas. You beat them to hell, but they still work. So that's why I went to bed so early last night, and that's why I'm consequently up so early in the morning. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be something if I could do this early every single morning? Every day, and it makes, give me 2, 3, 4 days off, something like that. But, get up early in the morning, do a podcast, go to work. I've gotten to the point where I can get these out from start to finish. It doesn't take me that long to render them in Reaper. It does take a skinny minute to upload it, like 15 minutes or something like that, give or take, to upload them. But outside of that, it's really not that big of a deal. But it would be kind of challenging to do it and then upload it every single morning before I went to work. Although maybe not, because really once it's the uploaded part is what takes the most time. So I figure after I record it, I render it. That just takes, I don't know, a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes. I never really timed it, but it takes a few minutes. Then start uploading it to where I upload it, and then go take a shower real quick, start getting ready for work, come back, post it on my site with a description, and share it to the world. Maybe it could be done. It'd be a bit of a hassle, a bit of a real stringent routine to get into. But if it ever gets to that point where I feel like this show merits so much attention and has so much demand, then maybe that's something I could do. Since I've been talking a lot about podcast learnings, I'd like to kind of integrate that into the show a little bit more, about some things I've been thinking about for the show and how a podcaster's mind works, and generally podcasters' mind works poorly. So today, I just also wanted to talk a little bit more about podcast learning by what I noticed from the previous podcast I did about podcast learnings part 3. So I experimented with moving back further from the microphone and kind of having a more relaxed tone. And while it did kind of change the sound characteristics a little bit, unfortunately, it added so much more room noise that I noticed it. I mean, eventually your ear gets used to it and you kind of stop noticing it. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But definitely I feel like I lost some quality by doing that. And I also noticed how many times I said, it's not the kind of thing I'm going to go edit it out. I mean, hell, not that big of a deal. But I noticed I said, quite a bit in there. And then I also realized that, every so often you have to clear your throat. That's just kind of how it is. But it's very unpleasant to listen to. So I've got to figure out a way to just hit pause real quick. And what I need to do is, I forget how to do this. I've seen a menu for it, but I need to figure out in Reaper how to customize either a mouse button or a different button to pause, because the standard pause key command is the media button. Unfortunately, I do not have a media button on this keyboard because this keyboard is this really, really small one. It's almost half the size, not quite half, it's a little longer, but basically half the size of it's about half the size of a normal keyboard. Oh, maybe 3/4, something like that. So it doesn't have that on there. It doesn't have like the 10 key. I mean, it's the buttons everything's just a little bit more compact, So, which is nice to make it fit on my workspace. It works great for that. The only problem is it doesn't have that button. So I got to figure out something else. But I figure, hey, I think the audience would rather hear the occasional mouse click than me going, hack, because that kind of stuff you have to do from time to time. You have to swallow. But at least when you go to swallow, you can kind of turn your head away from the mic like this, and you really don't notice it. But a big hack, the gate's not going to cut that off because it's at least as loud as your talking volume, But I just wanted to make note of that's the kind of way you have to go about during your episodes is, if you notice it, it's not like you need to go out there listening for faults and little abnormalities. I mean, you don't have to worry about that so much. As long as the content's good, it says okay if you kind of stutter or kind of have a hard time finding the words you're looking for. But it's just a good idea to kind of think about what you're doing and some things that kind of, if you start noticing it, listening back to it, there's a good chance the audience is noticing it. So I just figured out, hey, throw a little red herring out there. I noticed it, and I'm going to correct it as best as I can. So today's episode is going to be called, So You Want to Play Metal, Huh? Yeah. Metal. Squeal. Because that's metal. That's the best I can do at a very, very quiet volume. Now, something that maybe not everyone knows about me is when I first got out to doing singing, I was a teenager, probably like 15 years of age, that kind of age range. I've been playing guitar since about 14 or so. And, now, you know what? I got a guitar for Christmas my freshman year. And my birthday is like a month or so before Christmas. So I was freshly 15 years old when I first got my first guitar. It was an acoustic guitar from Best Buy. The leading source for great acoustic guitars. Let me tell you, that thing sucked. But that's what I learned. That's what I started on. And, several months later, I got an electric guitar that came in one of those little guitar amp bag packages with picks and cables and all that good stuff. It even came with a strap and an instructional video on how to put the strap on. Although I didn't pay attention to it clearly, because the way I used to put on a guitar strap was I would just put it around my neck and that was it. And after playing for a while, man, my neck sure is hurting. Then I saw somebody else, actually put their whole shoulder through it. And so it was just resting on one of their shoulders. And I looked at them like, oh, darn it. Yeah, that's where I was going wrong here. You know what I mean? Who'd have thought that when I first started, I didn't even know how to put the guitar on properly. That's just how bad it was. That's just the journey that a musician must go through when they first start. And it's kind of funny to look back on it and realize, wow, that's where it all started. Yeah, it was so bad I didn't even know how to put a guitar strap on my body correctly. Cheers. But after about a year of playing guitar, I'd say the first 4 or so months, 4, 5, 6 months, I had just an acoustic, and then got an electric shortly thereafter, after I kind of started to pick up the acoustic. And I kind of realized some of the shortcomings of that particular acoustic guitar after playing a buddy's electric. I'm like, whoa, this is way easier to play. Like this thing, man, that other thing is a toy. And I think the electric I was comparing it to was also a toy. It was made by Fernandez, the leading manufacturer of quality electric guitars for $100, I'm sure. I mean, hey, it was fine. Now that wasn't my first electric guitar. My first electric guitar was another Spanish company called Ibanez. Sorry, my brother, who's the really good drummer, calls it Ibanez and has for the longest time, even though it's Ibanez, but Ibanez. He always calls it that. Now, he knows better, but it's just kind of a joke, inside joke now. But my first guitar was an electric, was an Ibanez, and at any rate, so shortly after about a year of playing, I was just bad enough to where I could play, other people's music, kind of, and I thought I was getting it. And the truth is, after about a year of practicing, sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on how much time and effort you put into it, you can usually get to around where you can start playing stuff. And that's around the time I started, doodling around with buddies and started getting into more different types of music. And that's when kind of the hard rock thing began. Is after about playing for 2 years, I really started getting into harder rock. Basically from 15 on, really, I'd been into harder rock, or even towards the end of like my junior high days. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I really liked hard rock. So by the time I was a senior in high school, I've been playing for 3 to 4 years, something like that. I guess technically 3.5, because I started halfway through my freshman year. So by the end of my senior year, I'd been playing for 3.5 years, which, after 3.5 years, and especially when you're that age, when you have time to practice and you have the energy and you're, that's just what you enjoy doing. It seems like my mind was just more open to learn at that time too. And I had just more physical energy and dexterity, but I managed to escalate pretty quickly. I guess. But I just played electric guitar. I never really played acoustic, and it kind of got to the point where I started playing a lot of metal. And granted, the kind of metal I liked was typically your more like drop D style metal. I really like Tool, that I can say, but I started getting into things like I really liked System of a Down. I thought they were great. There were some other bands out there I liked, but those were two of the biggest influences at that time. Was Tool and System of a Down. I mean, there's other stuff I like too, don't get me wrong, but those are just two of the biggest. And so I kind of became one of the, got into the kind of drop D style metal. And the reason I specify drop D style metal is it really is a different genre. Like the Metallica stuff is typically in standard. Not to say they never change it, but it's more standard style metal. So you kind of get an idea of that. It's more like your speed kind of. There's a certain type of it, and if you know what I'm talking about, it's kind of like it's just a sign of the times. And obviously, drop D tuning has been around for a long time, but it was more prevalent in the newer age, kind of alternative style metal from my just from my observation, right? That's just my opinion, but it's probably true. So that's what I was into, and that's what I played. And it led into me and some friends making a kind of a progressive hard rock metal-y band. And it's just kind of funny. The reason I talk about it, I can give you a little bit of the backstory just so you kind of know that I've experienced this. I'm not just making this up. But, it seemed cool at the time, but it didn't take too long before I realized that sometimes playing metal wasn't so cool, you know? Now, granted, one good thing about the style of music we played is it sort of had a natural sort of a persona that came with it, and you kind of had an idea of what you would do on stage as far as how you would compose yourself, how you'd move about, so to speak, your stage presence. You know, so that was nice. You hear the music and you instantly kind of know about how the band should move. You know what I mean? So that was nice. The problem is, it was a style of music that not everyone's going to appreciate. And especially, like, I remember we played in a talent show, I think my, a hard rock song that in the talent show in like my junior year or something like that. And it involved me like screaming and stuff like that. And let's just say, it didn't go over so well with all people. I remember seeing people in the front row just like, what the hell? I went to a fairly conservative Texas high school. So, well, clearly there were a lot of metal-y people that enjoyed it. You know, you had all kinds of different groups and cliques and crews and whatever you call them out there. Don't get me wrong, but it was overwhelmingly very, you know, suburban, white Protestant, kind of conservative. Your sideburns had to be no lower than your earlobe. Your hair couldn't be too long. And it was, their definition of too long was not very long at all. You know, at least you didn't have to tuck your pants in or something like that. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't like going to like a private conservatory or something. But it was pretty, pretty conservative. You had to make sure you weren't. You had much over a 5 o'clock shadow. You got sent to the office to shave, and that happened to me a few times, and it sucked having to hack away with this little single blade disposable piece of crap razor. Hell, I couldn't even cut my wrist with that thing, much less a hair. You know. Now that's a metal statement if I've ever heard one. But at any rate, so that's just one example. If you're going to play at the school talent show, which is actually a pretty big audience, it was cool. You know, I wouldn't take it back for anything, but just realize not everyone's going to appreciate your style of music. And especially when it comes to being a metal musician, just realize it's very niche and not everyone's going to like it. And I always get a kick out of, I just can't tell you how many times, like, you know, there's some people that you're in some kind of a social setting of some kind and somebody busts out an acoustic. Oh, hey, you play? Yeah, I want to hear you play. And like, I don't play acoustic music. I don't really know anything acoustic that you're going to appreciate. And you don't want to be like that guy. It's like, geez, you know, I really don't. Well, I think I know this old Dave Matthews, and you kind of fumble through it. It's like, yeah, I don't really play acoustic much. Well, play something you know. I'm like, well, it doesn't really translate very well on acoustic. You know what I mean? There's just some things that don't work. So usually you get to a point where you realize, hey, just for this, your own sake, just learn, you know, a handful of kind of acoustic classics that everyone kind of knows. It just makes your life easier so that you don't have to be that guy. So good point to know is if you want to play metal and you don't want to come across as a dick to the other 99% of the population, learn a few, you know, an Eagles song, a little this, a little that, a little Sublime or something, you know, something that everyone's heard of, and just learn a few. It's not a big deal. Although there's a good chance that if you do start learning some other people's music and all you play is metal, you'll probably figure out something that I noticed is that metal requires a very different type of technique than acoustic guitar playing, and there's a very good chance that the stuff that is really pretty basic and easy, you're going to be very poorly developed at playing. It's like, this is simple. Why is it that I can play this Eagles song, but it just doesn't sound very good? It's like, yeah, it's very, very different. You know, it's not so much the complexity of the music that you're playing. It's just when you're on an acoustic guitar, the chord transitions aren't as fast, so therefore you have to do them cleaner. In some ways, it's actually harder to play slow. And if you don't believe me, go play metal and then go back and try to play an acoustic guitar of something kind of light and airy. And you'll find out real quick that, while there are some challenges that come with playing technical, fast music like metal, there's also some challenges that come with playing slower music where the parts aren't necessarily as interesting, and the way you play it is oftentimes more important than what you're playing. And that's the thing I now enjoy about acoustic music and have learned, but you're talking about someone who'd been playing for 4 or 5 years at that time, of my metal localypse, metal capade, to somebody who's been playing for over 15 years now. So it just kind of goes to show. And so at any rate, I learned a few acoustic songs, and it just trust me on this one. And, it just is easier that way. Now, one thing that's kind of nice about the metal music is that you don't necessarily have to play that loud when you're practicing. And at that time, I always lived in apartments, especially while I was in college and that kind of thing. So, I didn't really have my own house. Well, we rented a little house briefly for like not even a year. That place sucked. I mean, it was like $300 a month. That's how crappy the house was when I was in college, right after I first got married at the tender age of 20. But by the time we were 22, we had bought our house. So, really from the ages of basically my entire childhood all the way through the age of 22, I'd always lived in apartments. So my poor drummer had a hard time being able to practice. He had to always do it in other ways. In other places, but me, I can always practice close to home. Now, the only thing is, it's kind of hard to go fire up your big amp, but at the very least, you can get a small practice amp and some, metal-y distortion pedal, and you can play. So that's one thing I think is nice, and that a lot of people, a lot of people are really into metal is a lot of times musicians are very introverted people, especially metal ones. That's why so many of them are so good. Especially some of these metal guitar players. And what's nice about it is you can not be from the best environment, get you a little metal guitar and an amp and go to town. You don't have to play especially loud, which is nice. Now, these poor bass players, unless they want to play on their headphones, which sucks, doing DI bass through your headphones, it just sucks. But the problem is you can't practice very loud at all because the waves just go straight through everything, So in some ways, if you're going to play metal, it's easiest to play guitar because otherwise you can't hardly practice. And what's even worse, as I came to find out, is being a metal singer. Well, I don't claim to be much of a metal singer ever, especially now. I really don't do it at all. But when I was in my teens, I would say by the time I turned about 18, from the ages of like 14 to 18, I definitely tried my hand at singing metal and all the screaming. And what I found out is like, wow, it seems like it's a whole lot of effort for something that, you could really only do in one genre of music, and it's kind of like, I figured if I'm going to learn to do one or the other, I'm going to either learn how to sing or to scream. And it doesn't seem like at that point that there was really two ways around it. And I chose to sing. I just felt it was a much better endeavor. And plus screaming, I'm sure my technique was horrible. It kind of hurt. And there was sometimes it wasn't so bad, and sometimes like, I don't feel like doing this, but we're at a band practice. This was before, we really had an established band going. I just call it music practice. I shouldn't call it band practice because we weren't really in a band at the time. So, but yeah, go try practice screaming, metal singing in a guitar. I'm sorry, practice your metal screaming in an apartment. You're going to have the cops called on you because they think there's a murder going on. It's like, what is the Tasmanian devil living upstairs from me? It's and it just sounds ridiculous on your own. It just sounds so ridiculous by itself, and that's the thing that like going to a metal show, it really seems cool. And I can see why a lot of people are into it. I'm into it. Or was, not really now, but there is something to be said about going to a metal show and it's just, whoa, it sounds cool. Everyone's into it. And it's kind of got this natural like progression to it to where how to kind of how to move to it and that kind of thing. And then there's the mosh pits, which are, you know, a friendly mosh pit may not seem that friendly, but there's different types of mosh pits. And when I was younger, I really liked the friendlier ones, right? Now, the ones where people are literally trying to mess people up, that's not so much what I like, but the kind of thing where somebody slips and falls, somebody's very quick to pick you up. That's what I liked. But I was also at some shows where I realized, I'm not big enough for this. I'm done. But then they don't let you out of the mosh pit, so you have to kind of like jack with people to get out. You know what I mean? It's like, well, look, asshole, if you don't want to be in it, at least let me get out of it. And I remember at one, I didn't like punch somebody, but they kept pushing you back in there, and you kind of had to like, not elbow, but kind of like shoulder your way through, then just kind of, running back your way out of there. It was like, look, I'm done. You know what I mean? Look, I have a face full of blood. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't see. This sucks. You know what I mean? I don't know what I broke or cut, but I would like to figure this out. I mean, I could be missing teeth, but actually it was just a small little cut, wasn't even a big deal. My nose bleeds real easily because it's been broken so many times. It's just like if I sneeze too hard, there you go. But that's some of the joys of playing metal is on live, it is really a cool thing. However, outside of that, it's not very cool, like ever. I'm telling you, now that I've been out of it, there was I met I forget who it was, but somebody's, actually I do remember who it was. So it was an associate, how do I say this? It was the daughter of an uncle-in-law's boyfriend, right? Man, that's pretty complicated. So an uncle-in-law's daughter's boyfriend, and it was more of a recent marriage thing. It wasn't like, that I'd been around these people my whole life. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, we're family kind of now. Okay, cool, whatever. And so, the poor guy was at some kind of a family event, and he was there, and we were kind of talking. There's several people on that side of the family that are musicians. So me, my brother, my cousin, and well, that's really it. And then my uncle-in-law, I guess, but he's not as much of a musician as we are. Basically, he started when he was like 50. So, you know what I mean? He's it's a different outlet for him than it is for someone like me. Fair enough. Well, he's fairly well accomplished, all things considering. But anyway, so this poor guy is, he's in a metal band. They play hard rock. And so, we're farting around on the electric and the acoustic. I'm mostly doing the acoustic. And this guy's an electric. You can tell. He's kind of like I was back when I was around his age. I just played electric. And so, we're all kind of playing little stuff, kind of singing along, and it's cool. I'm like, hey, man, you go ahead. He's like, yeah. And he immediately, you could tell he's like, oh, crap, what do I play? Because, for one thing, he didn't ask to play. I just sort of gave it to him. And I kind of couldn't help but do it because I could tell he was kind of a showmanist. He was kind of a braggart, like talking about how awesome his band is and stuff like that. So he'd kind of played a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So, I played a little something. And let's just say I was a slightly more accomplished guitar player than this poor guy. And I don't typically like to do this kind of stuff, but every so often it's just kind of fun. And I didn't really go out of my way to play anything especially complicated. I just got on the acoustic, kind of played and sang some stuff, I maybe played a little part of a song a little bit that had a little something kind of jazzy to it that was way out of his reach of being able to play for probably a few years from then where he was at. But it was very apparent that this guy is not quite as experienced of a guitar player as I was. And so I couldn't help it. All right, man, here you go. Your turn. Yeah. Go ahead, buddy. And he's kind of playing this, and it's some, kind of metally riff stuff. And he's like, yeah, well, it sounds a whole lot better live. I'm like, oh yeah, talk about just case in point. Now, it was probably some 10 years later that I heard the Jared Dines, things that guitar players say, or things that this people say, bass players, singers say, things that drummers say. Well, it just case in point. This was the stereotypical, rock guitar player. And it's not that what he was playing was bad. It was just, it was kind of juvenile styled rock, the kind of thing that, oh, you've been playing for a year, you can probably play this. And a lot of drop D, just kind of, it was, kind of cheesy, easy to play modern rock. That's all it was. But you could just tell how sheepish he felt playing, because he was playing nobody really appreciated what he was doing. And on his own merit, a lot of what he was playing was just like, Jun 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 nee 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 jun 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 nee 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 jun 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 nee 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 jun 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 jun. You know what I mean? It's like, how by itself it is lame as hell. It's like, oh, you play bass, okay. Here, let's go play this. Dun 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 dun. By itself, it is just freaking stupid as hell. That's why I have a hard time, that's why I really appreciate a very good bass player, because this is what they do. They understand it, but they know how to make it sound cool, even when they're playing something that's kind of rudimentary, That's what a bass player does. And it's kind of like acoustic, guitar players. They may just be playing C and G chords, but it's the way they play it. It just, then if they're playing only 3 chords over and over again, they know how to make it sound great and just very musical and beautiful. The same thing with a really good bass player. And a really good bass player, they just know how to attack the note. Like the way you hit the note, even though you're really just hitting one string most of the time, it is the way you hit it is so much more important. You know what I mean? Because you might just be playing dun 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 dun. So if you don't hit it right, it's just dun 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 dun. It just sounds terrible. You know what I mean? It's masked quite a bit in a metal show, but if you're not a good bass player, it's pretty obvious when you play by yourself. You know what I mean? And to be honest, unless you're a good, it's kind of like, if you're not a good bass player, you sound terrible playing by yourself, whereas you can be an average guitar player and be a little bit more passable. But that's the kind of thing, with metal, how do I say it? There's going to be a lot of instances in which you look really stupid being a metal musician. That's cool that, on stage you've got that certain hairdo, or that you dress a certain way, or you've got tattoos and piercings. It's cool in that environment. But for your everyday, not so much, Let me tell you, like when I was in the metal band that I was in, the progressive metal, I had long hair. The kind of thing, you kind of push it back and it goes down to about your shoulders, that kind of thing. And I had a very long beard and big sideburns, and I had a very long beard. I mean, people thought I was Amish or something like that. Although, I've never been like a Satan-y thing. And that's the other thing, which I'll get to, is, I wasn't like a bad, mean person, and most, metal enthusiasts are not. They're actually quite the opposite. They tend to be a little bit overly sensitive, which is kind of funny. But, it wasn't so cool being out and about when I was a metal musician. Now, fortunately, I worked overnight, so my interactions during the day were pretty few and far between. But I tell you, before I started working nights, when I looked and dressed that way, let's just say I got pulled over by the police a lot more, And you could say, oh, they're profiling me. But you know what? I don't blame them. Here I'm driving some ratty car, blasting some music that to them sounds like Satan's national anthem, and then they take one look at me and like, oh, this guy does, I don't know what he does, but he clearly does something. I don't blame them one bit. And plus I'm used to being up late, like a lot of metal-y people are. So if I'm there during the day doing something, because I have to go to the bank, which is another fun adventure, you tend to look a little tired, and because you generally are. Well, hell, I've been up for 24 hours. I'm a little tired, especially when I was working nights and had to go daytime thing. I mean, it was just like, geez, I couldn't tell you how many times I get pulled over. And I mean, I wouldn't get tickets, which was great, but at least they realized, okay, I may have been wrong about this one, but just a heads up, if that's how you're going to roll, you're going to get pulled over more. You're going to have a lot of negative reaction to you. And you can say, oh, well, people need to respect my differences. Well, that's fine. You need to respect, you also have to, as a metally person, you got to respect the fact that you are not the norm. You are not going to change the status quo, and that part of you, that what makes your whole, persona interesting to yourself is the fact that it is different. And they want to be unique and different, just like everyone else, and that's the reality. Now, you could say, I didn't put on like the eye makeup and stuff. I'm like, come on, that's ridiculous. But, my wardrobe was typically an old pair of jeans that were kind of beat up and a kind of a holey shirt of some kind. The t-shirt, typically black, you know what I mean? That's in some Vans. That's kind of how I rolled on a day-to-day basis. Not too uncommon for most musicians, only I had the really long hair and the beard to go with it. No tattoos, no piercings, never have. Although if there was a period of time I really wanted an eyebrow piercing, now I'm sure glad I didn't do that. That would have been stupid as hell. Especially if you see me now. Oh, yeah. There are some times when it just doesn't work, and it's almost 99% of the time that stuff just doesn't work for most people. But, teach their own. But yeah, so realize that when you're going out in public, and especially if you want to be a metal musician and play in the metal scene, you have to kind of look a certain way. Otherwise, you're not very well received, typically. Not to say that I wish that that's how things were, but it is what it is. You want to have fans, you need to be convincing. If you don't live it and breathe it, guess what? The people that you want to be your audience, they're going to pick up on it real quick, and they're not going to appreciate it. So it's not like I dressed the part or did this the part. So because I felt like that's what was necessary. It's like more so like that's just who I was already, and this is what I happen to do in my music, and this is our band, and you know what I mean? That's kind of the way we presented it, and that's why it worked. It's not like we were being disingenuous, like, oh, we're playing this, so therefore we must be like this. I remember we used to have these light up reindeer that we would have hump each other on the stage, Why not, right? It's metal. See, light up reindeer have more than one use after Christmas. Isn't that nice? The other use, aside from being there to hump each other on the stage, is they're also good at taking up space in your attic and garage. That's their other great use. So now let's say you're out in public, right? You're just at the grocery store. You just get odd looks all the time. And people, excuse me, man, like you go to the bank and you can just tell people are a little uneasy. It's just like you can just tell their hand is like hovering the security button, And unfortunately, I'm not an especially big person, but which kind of helps, but even worse, I'm like, at the time I was super skinny and wiry. I worked overnight, so lifting boxes. So I was one of those real strong, kind of like real skinny little strong guys. I'm not trying to boost my ego here, but that's just what I was, because that's the kind of work I did. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't need to. I lifted thousands of pounds every night for hours on end. And that was my lifestyle for several years. And then I'd go and play metal shows. So I basically lived on Red Bull and cigarettes. You know what I mean? Lived 90 to nothing. Like eating was an inconvenience. I ain't got time for that. Here, let me get a sandwich. Whatever. Yeah, I'm done. That's just the lifestyle of a lot of these people. You gotta work to live, and you got to be alive to play metal. So, but when you're out in public, just realize that you're not going to always be well received, and you don't want to. And that's why I've noticed sometimes these emo-y, metal-y people, they seem to carry around this attitude about them, and it's because I think in their mind they kind of have to, because they realize that they're not going to be accepted. But the truth is, you can look different and be different than other people, so long as you don't act like you being different is a big deal, right? You can have tattoos and piercings and all that stuff, but it's amazing what if you just walk around with a smile on your face and act like a normal person, which you probably really are a normal person if you just are willing to admit it. But if you just act normal and not go out of your way to cause a lot of attention to yourself, you won't be received so poorly. So that's fine if it'll be very obvious that, hey, this guy likes to ride Harleys and plays and likes heavy music. That's fine. that doesn't mean you need to go out and like war paint or dressed up as like with masks on, but people do it and they wonder why people don't respect them is because you're an idiot. Don't do that kind of stuff. Come on. It might be fun here and there, but if you're going to dress up like, I don't know, like a vampire, come on. That's not what a sane person does. A sane person doesn't dress like Count Chocula. But if you do, you're going to not be respected very well. Oh, Count Chocula, that guy's a pimp. Oh, how many times must I slap you? A one, a two. Oh man, it's I know a pimp when I see one. Little Dave Chappelle humor. Love that guy. But that's the kind of thing, like metal that whole scene does not integrate well in modern society. It just doesn't. It's always going to be niche and kind of in the corner. And the other thing is there's like different types of metal-y people, right? This is my favorite. One of my favorite stories is, so in high school, let's just say as attractive and beautiful as I feel I am now, I may not have been quite as, I kind of grew into my skin, my face and all that. And, in particular, so did my brother. I thought I was one of those awkward looking, kind of awkward acting teenagers, but my brother was especially that, you know what I mean? Now he's bigger, stronger, and more handsome than I will ever wish to be. Not to say that either of us are especially good looking, but I'm just saying, I think he's the looker of the two of us. That guy looks cool, man. He's got like this whole Jesus look to him, and it's kind of badass. I wish I could pull it off. Even his facial hair is better than mine, which is the biggest thing. Although I always tell him, hey, you might be bigger than me, but I can still kick your ass. And it's probably true. Got a lot of, I don't even know. Like, I could never imagine fighting my brother. We're just not those kind, like, that's not how we are at all. We've never been like that. We've always been really good friends. So it's kind of awkward. Like, it reminded me of being like in that fight scene in Pineapple Express. It's like, I don't want to do this, man, but he's hitting them with a little hand vac, a little dirt devil. They don't want to hurt each other, but they got to do what I got to do. This sucks because we're friends, right? But my brother was a little even more so awkward than I was during the high school years. And we didn't really dress up, especially like anything. Hell, we came up poor, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm not going to get into the details, but we definitely didn't have much money, especially in our later teenage years. So, because basically, I'll say it, especially when by the time I was like, in our late teenage years, I'm not going to say exactly when, but our father passed away. And granted, our parents had been divorced, but that's just, it was what it was. So we were a little strapped, we had to work. Boo-hoo, go, I'm over it. It's not a big deal. But it was a little bit harder, I think, for my younger two siblings. And we were just kind of awkward kids, didn't have a lot of money, didn't dress very fashionably because that just wasn't in the budget. So, even if we wanted to dress like Count Chocula, it just, no, can't do it. You know what I mean? We got to help pay for rent. So it was just one of those things. And so, like, I remember me and my brother were walking by, and my brother happened to have a Tool shirt on, right? And in all fairness, we had been to a few Tool concerts. We were really big Tool fans. And this girl dressed like a vampire or something like that, some really gothic girl that thought she was real, I guess, gothic. The kind of thing where they had like the face kind of like painted, the eyeshadow that goes all, over the top and all that, the crazy hair and like the weird just dressed stuff. It's like, you could hear her talking, saying, "Oh, that guy's such a poser. I bet he's never even been to any of their concerts." And my brother, he was about to turn around. I'm like, "Come, just let it go." And we kept our faces forward and just kind of snickered a little bit, because little does she know, she just met one of the best drummers on the face of the planet. You know what I mean? At the time, this guy could play all the Danny Carey stuff. If you know anything about Danny Carey from Tool, he is a very, very good drummer. Not to say he's necessarily the best. That's not what this is about. But the guy could play all the Danny Carey stuff. And my brother is a very good drummer. And little does she, if anyone's a poser, it's her compared to him. my brother was into Tool like way more than most people everywhere. I mean, knew it all. And that was his thing, and he could play it all. He'd been to it's not even that regardless of whether you've been to the show, so you don't have to have been to a concert from someone to be an uber fanatic. And let's just say my brother was a little bit more fanatical about them than anybody I knew. Yet he was the poser because, he didn't look like a goth person, and therefore he must not have ever been to any shows. And hell, if he hadn't, he probably shouldn't have been. I mean, the guy was like probably 15, 16. You might not want to, I mean, what are you going to do? Go with your parents, a legal guardian, to a Tool show? Come on. And in all fairness, I had taken him to a couple, you know what I mean? He'd come with me. It's more not like I was chaperoning him. We went to a couple of Tool concerts together, and they were phenomenal. Just absolutely wonderful. Best shows I've ever seen kind of thing, life-changing. It basically changed my life. But at the same time, realize that if you're going to be a metal musician, that is your audience. That's them. People like that is who you're playing for. All right. No, not always, but generally speaking, the people that really come out to the shows are the ones that want to put out the vibe, that, hey, we are scene kids, we are scene people. We're a part of this, we are what makes metal metal. Okay, cool. Here's a flyer. Come to my next show. Great. Yeah, whatever. And that's just kind of how it goes. Now, not to say that everyone that you play for is going to be like that, but generally speaking, the people that go out to local shows, either they know you and are supporting you, or you're more fanatics. And with the fanatics, especially in metal, comes, well, the crazy metal fan. And let me tell you about the crazy metal fan. If you haven't met them, they're out there. And when I say they're out there, I mean they're out there. How do I say it? I'll put it to you like this. The good thing about metal is there are fanatics out there who really love it and really appreciate it, and many of them are normal, right? But it's that one that's not, that really makes things difficult to want to do this. I mean, I would say 8 out of 10 people that go to a metal show are normal. But as much as I like to say 1 out of 100, it's not even that low. It's more like 20% of them are freaking crazy as hell. I don't know why. That's just been my observation. In fact, it might be more like 30%. But I'm just going to be nice and say it's probably about 20% of metal people, show attenders are a little thrown off, and they like to get drunk. And they like to do drugs, and then they combine them together and do some weird things that make your life very, very awkward. And on top of that, here's the other thing. There's this thing about metal and Satan that apparently go hand in hand, even though they really shouldn't, because they're not the same. But there's kind of like, it's now what metal has turned into is kind of why I'm not into it anymore. It's turned into this like dark music where it used to be more so like an emotional release and of anger, and it's just you feel it. It was great. That's what it was about. Now it's more about like turning society on its head, and the whole Judeo-Christo system is messed up and needs to be turned over. Pentagrams, Satan, fallen angels, piss in a cup and turn a cross, crucifix, and it's kind of like you know what? That's not what most people who are in this scene are about, but that's kind of what the impression is taken over. And I don't really think that that's what most people are like, but it's kind of become the norm. And I think the reason why it's kind of taken off is because when you see imagery like that and you hear words like that, it immediately makes you kind of feel uneasy, right? And it's kind of like it gives you a certain vibe. And I think that's what it's about. It's not so much about worshiping Satan. You know what I mean? From the outside looking in, this is just kind of my perspective, because that's where I kind of, when things got like that, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of done with this hard rock metal stuff. And I saw some weird things. Like weird things that you just can't unsee. Like somebody cutting open their palm and then drinking their own blood. Like that's just, that's a little over the top for me, I think. Yeah, and that was, and unfortunately, that wasn't even the worst. That's just the one I'm willing to share. The other one, the only one thing I'd have to share with a therapist probably was so ridiculous, but maybe I'll share it. I don't know. That'll be for another time. So I might want to sleep tonight. But at any rate, it's just, it's kind of become this thing that's so like synonymous with the occult and devil worship, and it really isn't. But that's the kind of imagery that people associate with music, and it's gotten to the point where if it's not like that, it's wrong, And it's kind of like the whole devil thing has become cool, even though they're not really devil worshipers. It's just that the imagery is cool, right? It's kind of like a lot of people think like the Nazi stuff is cool and communism stuff is cool, even though they're not really into being Nazis or communists. Just some of the imagery and the stuff that associated with it is cool. And that's kind of the thing with metal nowadays. It's all about dark imagery, just weird, kind of like this kind of like feeling that it's just very, like you almost are kind of scared when you listen to it. You know what I mean? And I think what it is where metal used to be more of like an angry thing. It's now become more of like a fear thing. It's kind of like listening to metal is sort of like going to a haunted house, right? You go there to be scared. The imagery is there to scare you. It's there to make you feel uneasy. And I think a lot of people that like that stuff, they like it because they feel uneasy and they have a lot of anxiety in their normal life. And so listening to that kind of music it makes them experience that, and it makes them feel more comfortable with it. I don't know how to explain it. It's a very strange feeling. And if you're the kind of person who feels music kind of like I do, it's not that I don't like it, but I can respect it. I appreciate it, even though I don't like it. It's not what I want to hear. It's just, I don't want to feel like that. But music like that invokes a different type of energy, and it's a certain energy that, I guess people like. There's a lot of people that like that kind of stuff. They're intrigued with the dark side of things. And I think that, like, for a lot of people, having that in their life kind of helps ground them. It's kind of a way for example, if you're an angry person, you listen to angry music and you get in the car and you blast it helps get that out of you, So then you get out of the vehicle and you're like, hey, what's up, neighbor Ted? No, nothing much, Bob. We're good. You know what I mean? It's kind of like gangster rap. It's not that most people who listen to it want to go out there and shoot people. But you know what? I get it. Like, gangster hardcore rap is really no different than death metal. It gets that kind of emotion out of you, and it's kind of a release is really what it is. And I think that to understand metal, you got to realize that what you're doing is providing an emotional release for people. Your emotional orgasm via death metal guitar and super fast blast beats on the drums, But it's kind of like listening to dark death metal like that, or I guess it helps. It's kind of like, I think for people, it helps purge the poison from their soul. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the response that it has. And it's one of those things, like, if you don't appreciate the genre at all, if Metallica is too heavy for you, and you think that's devil music, well, there's going to be some other bands that you might just want to stay away from completely, because they will probably make you shit yourself. But go record one. Oh, that's a trip. But let me tell you that, just, try to keep an open mind about it, because even though you don't appreciate it, it is a viable form of music, and a lot of people really get a lot out of it. While I may not be one, I kind of get it, and I've kind of tried to do my best to sort of explain it to people as best I can, but I can only explain it so well because I'm not one of those people who really appreciates it. But at the same time, people who really appreciate it tend to have an even harder time explaining it because they're emotionally attached. Me, I'm not. I'm pretty good at being able to stay objective on things like that. Like, I can generally tell you, like, some of the best music is the easiest to make fun of. You know what I mean? If you have a hard time making fun of it, it's probably not good. So if you take that same approach and philosophy to, metal's very easy to make fun of, and a lot of times, you know what I mean? And generally, the better the metal band, the easier they are to make fun of. So it just kind of goes, hand in hand, in case in point, that good music is very easy to make fun of, but hard to replicate. You know what I mean? It's just kind of how that goes. So at any rate, I mean, I think that's enough. Hell, I'm going on about an hour now. I think that's enough, conversation on, so you want to play metal, huh? So whatevs. Y'all have a great morning, evening, afternoon, supper time, whatever it is for you. And I'll catch y'all next time on the Working Musicians Podcast, the original Working Musicians Podcast. Bye-bye.